Whatever the question, love is the answer. I once gave a refrigerator repairman several of my books and tapes. The repairman asked, "How do you ever expect to make any money when you give away all your stuff?" I replied, "When the day comes that you don't have to ask me that question, you'll have the answer. The more you give away, the more you have." It's a paradox, but it truly works. Nothing is formed, nothing dies. Everything is simply in transition. And that includes you, who you really are. You're eternal, you're changeless, trapped in a form that is in transition. Here's a little lesson in logic. If you control your thoughts, and your feelings come from your thoughts, then you control your feelings. Keep that in mind always. Whatever feelings you're having, whatever emotions you're experiencing, they came from a thought. And you control your thoughts. And if you don't believe that you control your thoughts, then you send whoever it is that is controlling your thoughts to me. And I'll treat them. And you'll get better. That's how absurd it is. If you only believe what you see, then you're limited to what's on the surface. If you only believe what you see, why do you pay your electric bill? You've never seen electricity, and yet you know it's there. There was a time when scientists didn't believe in microscopic life. It wasn't the invention of the microscope that gave us microscopic life. That's always been there. Don't be limited in your life by the technology of your observation methods. If you are to change a habit, you must be the treatment. The treatment isn't something that happens to you. It's something that you are. No one can create anger or stress within you. Only you can do that by virtue of how you process your world. No limit people don't say, "I'm going to get it all." They say, "I am it all already, but I can grow." No one knows enough to be a pessimist. No amount of guilt can ever change history. No amount of guilt can ever change anything. Your guilt is a waste of time. Feeling guilty about the outcome of the Peloponnesian War isn't going to change it. This morning is just as over as the Peloponnesian War. Blame is a neat little device that you can use whenever you don't want to take responsibility for something in your life. Use it, and you will avoid all risks and impede your own growth. Make a personal commitment to do what you love and love what you do today. Be the cure. Don't look outside yourself for it. If prayer is you talking to God, then intuition is God talking to you. Listen to those inner signals that help you make the right choices, no matter what anyone thinks. Trust your intuitive voices and go with them. Learn to find the blessing in pain. Practice observing the pain rather than owning it. Loving sacredly means loving what is, even if you don't comprehend the deeper meaning behind it. Behavior is a much better barometer of what you are than words. I am grateful to all those people who said no. It is because of them that I did it all myself. Every obstacle is an opportunity. Every obstacle is a test. Keep in mind that life gives exams. Emotions are choices.
There comes a moment in every life when the soul whispers softly at first that something isn't right, that despite the things you've gathered, the achievements you've counted, the steps you've followed, something remains untouched, unawakened, unfulfilled. Not because life has failed you, but because your thoughts have not yet remembered their power. You see, you are not merely a body moving through the world. You are a field of consciousness creating it. And the lens through which you look at the world, your thoughts, is not a passive reflection of life, but the very projector of its quality. What you think is not just commentary, it's alchemy. You don't see things as they are. You see things as you are through the stories you've chosen, through the meanings you've inherited, through the emotions you allow to linger like smoke in the chambers of your mind. Your outer world is always mirroring the dominant vibration of your inner world. And your thinking, moment by moment, is the tuning fork. The universe, being eternally impartial, says only this: as you believe, so shall it be done unto you. You are not what the world calls you. You are not your name, your title, your reputation, or your fears. You are the thinker behind the thoughts, the dreamer behind the mask, the awareness, watching it all unfold, and waiting, always waiting, for you to reclaim your authorship of this life. Most people never pause to wonder, who is doing the thinking in here? And where did these thoughts come from? They repeat patterns like a song stuck on repeat. Songs of lack, of worry, of comparison, of judgment, never realizing that they are dancing to music. They never chose that their mind has become a house built by strangers, and now they live inside it, calling it truth. But thought is not fixed. It is fluid. It can be questioned, it can be healed, it can be elevated, and when it is, life itself begins to take a new shape. The quality of your life is not determined by the conditions you're in, but by the conversations you're having with yourself about those conditions. It's not the storm that breaks you. It's the belief that you cannot sail through it. Begin to listen, truly listen, to the voice that speaks just beneath the noise, the still, silent knowing that's always been with you. It doesn't shout. It doesn't panic. It doesn't echo the world's madness. It simply reminds you, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who chooses which thoughts get to stay. And that is the first liberation, to recognize that you are not a prisoner of your thinking. You are its master. But mastery begins with awareness. Every moment you catch yourself thinking a thought that limits you, a thought that shrinks your spirit or dim your light, is a holy moment, a spiritual opportunity. Not to shame yourself, but to remember yourself. To remember that no one installed that thought without your permission, and that now, in this breath, you can choose again. The quality of your life is not waiting at the end of some distant achievement. It is shaped, molded in the unseen furnace of your inner dialogue. Do you feed the flame of resentment? Do you pour gasoline on thoughts of fear, of not being enough, of being left behind? Do you carry the past into today like a sack of stones, repeating, "This is just how I am," as if your identity were carved in stone rather than breathed into being? Or do you wake up each morning and choose a new vibration? Do you speak to yourself with love before the world gets a chance to interfere? Do you plant thoughts of peace, joy, forgiveness, and water them with presence until they bloom into a life that reflects your soul? Most people treat thoughts like facts, but thoughts are just clouds passing through the vast sky of your awareness. You are not the cloud, you are the sky. And in that realization, you are free. Let me ask you gently, What have you been thinking about today? Because that's what you've been living. The world around you is echoing back the tone you set in silence, and nothing will change until the thinking does. So if you want to heal your relationships, change your thinking about connection. If you want to find peace, change your thinking about the past. If you want to create abundance, change your thinking about worth. And if you want to love yourself, change your thinking about who you believe you are. It is never about adding more. It is always about subtracting the noise. You were born whole. You were born wise. You were born connected to the divine. And every thought that told you otherwise was an illusion borrowed from a world that forgot how to see. But today you remember, that is the beginning of everything. The moment you begin to observe your thinking without becoming it, something miraculous happens. A quiet space opens up between stimulus and response, between the noise of the world and the whisper of your soul. In that space lives your power not to react, but to choose, not to cling, but to release, not to fear, but to trust. And that single shift from automatic to aware begins to alter the very texture of your life. You stop being dragged by circumstance and start becoming guided by consciousness. You stop trying to control the uncontrollable and begin to align with what is eternal within you. There is no circumstance outside of you that holds more weight than the thoughts you are rehearsing inside you. You may not control what others do, what they say, or what has already happened, but you do control the meaning you assign to it. And meaning is everything. A thought of betrayal can become a teacher of boundaries. A thought of loss can become a doorway to gratitude. A thought of failure can become the seed of wisdom. It all depends on the thinker. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness is circumstantial, that peace is a destination, that worth must be proven. But none of that is true. It never was. The outer world is merely the shadow cast by the shape of your thoughts. And when you sculpt those thoughts with love, with intention, with a gentle but firm sense of presence, the world reflects a beauty that was waiting all along. No spiritual teacher, no enlightened soul ever reached peace by rearranging the furniture of the world. They reached it by rearranging the architecture of their inner world. They learned to master the mind, to see through its tricks, to soften the grip of judgment, and to return again and again to the spaciousness of now. They did not wait for perfect conditions. They created a perfect perception. And that is the invitation for you. The quality of your life is shaped by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Not, why is this happening to me? But what is this showing me? Not, what do I lack? But, what is life trying to bring forward in me through this? The quality of your thinking is determined by your willingness to surrender the need to be right, to be certain, to be in control. Because real transformation does not come from control. It comes from trust. It comes from the surrender of false stories and the embrace of the sacred present. You were not born to ruminate in regret or spiral in worry. You were born to create. And your primary creation is the thought you allow to take root in your mind. That thought becomes emotion. That emotion becomes behavior. That behavior becomes character. And character becomes destiny. Trace it all back, and it begins with one silent seed, one thought. So plant well. Think of your thoughts as guests in the temple of your mind. Who are you letting in today? Who are you allowing to sit at the table of your awareness? Are they voices of fear or faith? Are they the voices of past wounds or present miracles? You are the gatekeeper. You are the master gardener. And whatever you nourish within will blossom in the world without. Do not underestimate this power. It is not a metaphor. It is spiritual law. Change the frequency of your thoughts, and you will alter the symphony of your life. This is not about positive thinking for the sake of ignoring pain. It is about conscious thinking that acknowledges pain but does not build a home inside it. It is about choosing the higher perspective even when the lower one screams louder. It is about rising not because the world demands it, but because your soul remembers its wings. And yes, there will be days when the old thoughts return, when the inner critic bangs on the door, when the fog sets in again. That's okay. This is not a path of perfection. It is a path of presence. And presence is a practice. Every moment you return to your breath, every moment you observe without judgment, every moment you choose a higher thought that is victory, that is healing, that is awakening. Your thoughts are not who you are. They are passing weather systems in the vast sky of your being. Let them come, let them go, but don't let them build cities without your consent. Don't let them shape your life from unconscious repetition. You are not here to be a mirror of past programming. You are here to be a lighthouse, steady, awake, and rooted in truth. Let go of the belief that change begins outside of you. Let go of the belief that one day, when circumstances are just right, then you'll feel peace. The truth is simpler and more liberating. When you choose peaceful thoughts, your life becomes peaceful. When you think thoughts of compassion, you walk in compassion. When you honor yourself in thought, the world begins to honor you. It's not magic, it's alignment. And alignment begins when the mind remembers its servant role, not its master role. When the ego is seen clearly not as an enemy, but as a confused guide doing its best to protect you through fear. But you, dear soul, do not need to be protected by fear. You need to be liberated by truth. And the truth is this: your thinking shapes your frequency. And your frequency writes the melody your life will play. Then listen deeply now. Not just with your ears, but with the whole of your being, with the space behind your chest where the silence lives, with the gentle fire of awareness that never flickers, no matter how chaotic the world becomes. That space knows your life is not dictated by chance, nor is it controlled by fate. It is directed by the silent compass of your attention, and your attention always flows in the direction of your thoughts. Where your focus goes, your energy grows. Where your energy grows, your reality unfolds. And the seed of it all is thought. So if your life feels noisy, heavy, cluttered with conflict and confusion, the answer is not to rearrange the people around you or chase more distractions. The answer is to cleanse the temple of your mind. Dust off the old assumptions, wash away the fear-stained beliefs, open the windows of perception, and let the light of awareness pour in. Ask yourself, is this thought bringing me closer to freedom or further into suffering? That one question, asked honestly and gently, can save a lifetime of unnecessary pain. You do not need to believe every thought you think. You are not obligated to obey the voices that echo with limitation, fear, or doubt. You are allowed to pause, to breathe, to question. You are allowed to say, I no longer choose to live under that belief. And in that moment, chains begin to fall. Not the kind you see with your eyes, but the kind that have been weighing down your spirit for years. And that release, that sweet, invisible liberation, that is the soul beginning to remember itself. Many people are walking through life asleep to the miracle of their mind, asleep to the truth that heaven and hell are not places we go, but frequencies we choose. A thought of bitterness is a step toward hell. A thought of compassion is a step toward heaven. And these steps, taken moment by moment, build the path your feet will follow. Do not wait for a burning bush. Do not wait for thunder in the sky or a voice to break through the clouds. The voice is already inside you. It speaks in the silence. It speaks when you slow down long enough to hear the deeper questions. What am I rehearsing in my mind each day? What am I practicing with my inner dialogue? And does it serve the life I truly want to live? Because here is the hidden truth. You are always practicing something. Every thought you entertain, every judgment you accept, every fear you repeat, you are strengthening a pathway in your mind. That pathway becomes the direction of your life. So ask yourself, is this a path of light? Is this a path of freedom? Or am I unconsciously paving roads to old prisons? You are not broken. You are not behind. You are simply ready to awaken. That is why these words resonate. Not because they are new, but because they are ancient truths you've always known. Deep down, beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the expectations, your soul has always whispered, I am the thinker, I am the chooser, and I am free to choose again. Begin now. Begin today. Let this moment be the turning point, not the dramatic kind that needs lightning bolts or emotional fireworks, but the quiet kind where the soul simply stands up and says, no more thoughts that shrink me, no more stories that shame me, no more identities borrowed from pain. In their place, you begin to plant the seeds of clarity, of love, of worthiness. You begin to think as if life is on your side. You begin to believe that peace is not something to chase, but something to allow. You begin to live from the knowing that you are enough, not because you proved it, but because you remembered it. And that shift, subtle though it may be, is how miracles begin. Because when you change the way you think, you change the way you feel. When you change the way you feel, you change what you believe is possible. And when you change what you believe is possible, the universe rearranges itself to reflect that belief. Not because it was withholding, but because you were. You were withholding permission to receive because you didn't believe you were worthy. You were withholding love because you were afraid of being hurt. You were withholding peace because you thought chaos was your default setting. But now you begin to allow. And allowing begins with a thought. A single thought that whispers, what if the old story is not the truth? And once that thought enters, the whole house of illusion begins to shake. Because the mind that has built its home on fear cannot withstand the gentle wind of truth. That truth is simple. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not the voice that says you'll never make it. You are the awareness that hears that voice and chooses something higher. So today, choose again. Choose the thought that lifts you. Choose the thought that brings you back to stillness. Choose the thought that speaks to your future, not your fear. And when you forget, because you will simply remember that forgetting is part of remembering. Falling asleep is part of waking up. There is no shame in it, only grace. The quality of your life is not about what you have. It is not about what they think. It is about what you believe, what you nurture, what you entertain in the invisible world of your mind. And that is where your greatest work must begin, not in trying to force the external, but in softening, cleansing, and renewing the internal. Because when the internal world is healed, the external world becomes a mirror of that healing. And you become the light you were seeking. And when you become the light you were seeking, you stop chasing shadows. You stop grasping at empty promises wrapped in noise. You stop running from yourself because you finally realize there is nowhere to run. Everything you've ever wanted was already resting within the quiet space of your own being, waiting for your thoughts to align with its presence, not to earn it, but to see it, to see that your worth was never in question, only in recognition, that love was never absent, only obscured by the fog of conditioned belief. There is a profound shift that happens when you stop thinking in reaction and begin thinking in creation. When you stop allowing every passing fear to dictate your emotional climate and instead become the conscious author of your internal world. In that shift, you stop being a thermometer reacting to the temperature of the world, and you become the thermostat setting the tone of your life from the inside out. That is not philosophy. That is power. That is freedom. That is mastery. It doesn't happen by force. It happens by remembrance. And remembering is a sacred act. It's sitting in stillness long enough to hear the thoughts beneath the thoughts. It's breathing deeply enough to separate the truth from the trauma. It's choosing to become the observer instead of the reactor again and again until the old wiring begins to dissolve and a new way of being begins to rise. You cannot think your way to peace through judgment. You cannot think your way to love through resistance. But you can return always to a thought that is in harmony with who you truly are. A thought of grace, a thought of openness, a thought of I am already enough. And from that thought, a new vibration radiates outward, not in a shout, but in a silent frequency that draws new realities to your feet. Your job is not to fix the world. Your job is to think in alignment with truth and let the world respond to your alignment. That's how reality changes, not from resistance, but from resonance. If you don't like what life is reflecting, look not at the mirror, but at the face you're presenting to it. Change the internal pattern, and the reflection must follow. So many of us are addicted to fixing. We want to fix the job, the relationship, the circumstances. But rarely do we stop to examine the thinking that attracted those circumstances to begin with. And until that examination takes place, we find ourselves repeating the same storylines with different characters. Because the pattern was never out there, it was in here, in the thoughts we chose to believe, in the identities we wore like armor, in the narratives we never questioned. But now you see it. And with that seeing comes choice. And with choice comes healing. And with healing comes liberation. This is your turning point. Not because the stars have aligned, not because the world has suddenly become easier, but because you've decided to no longer abandon yourself with your thoughts. You've decided to no longer speak to yourself in ways you would never speak to another soul. You've decided to no longer give your power away to fleeting fears and old scripts. You've decided at last to come home to yourself. And home is not a place. It is a state of being. It is the vibration of love you allow yourself to rest in. It is the clarity that emerges when the mind softens. It is the deep, unwavering knowing that you are not here to be perfect, but to be whole. Not here to compete, but to contribute. Not here to survive, but to awaken. And awakening begins with thought. Not loud ones, not dramatic ones, but subtle, consistent thoughts of truth. Thoughts like, I am not my past. I am not this fear. I am not a victim of circumstance. I am a divine being, temporarily inhabiting form. I am allowed to think new thoughts. I am allowed to release the old. I am allowed to create a new reality, starting now, and then you do. Not all at once, but moment by moment, thought by thought, and those small shifts begin to gather, like droplets that become a stream, a current, a river, and finally, a sea of transformation. You look around, and the world seems to smile back, not because it has changed, but because you have. Your thinking has softened, your frequency has elevated, and the quality of your life has become the natural result. And as you continue on this path, not forward, but inward, you begin to realize that life has always been speaking to you in the language of reflection. Not punishment, not reward, but feedback. It shows you again and again the quality of your thoughts made visible. If your world is chaotic, perhaps your inner world has been cluttered. If your days feel heavy, perhaps your thoughts have been weighted by beliefs that no longer serve you. This is not to blame, this is to empower. Because if thought created it, thought can change it. You are not here to control every outcome. You are here to master your inner response to each outcome. That mastery is not stoicism, it is sacred receptivity. It is the art of choosing peace without the need for perfection. It is the quiet strength of being grounded in awareness, no matter what storms may come. And that grounding begins with one sacred habit: choosing higher thoughts. This is not about positive thinking as a mask. This is about truthful thinking as a mirror. Thinking that does not pretend life is perfect, but sees clearly that you are not the victim of it. That even when you do not control the wind, you can still set your sail, and your thoughts are the sail. So when the day begins, ask yourself, what direction will I sail today? Will you drift with the currents of fear? Will you replay the grievances of yesterday and call it truth? Will you grip tightly to your judgments and call it strength? Or will you release, not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up? Waking up to the truth that your mind is not a prison unless you let it become one. Your power lies in awareness. Awareness that watches thought without clinging to it. Awareness that sees a fearful thought and smiles gently, saying, I hear you, but I do not follow you. Awareness that witnesses an old wound rising and says, I understand. And I choose to bless it, not repeat it. This is the quiet revolution, the inner uprising that changes everything not by force but by vision, by returning to the truth that thought is creative, not reactive, that your experience of life is not happening to you, but through you, through the lens of your beliefs, through the patterns of your focus, through the tone of your self-talk. Speak to yourself kindly, not because it's trendy, but because your cells are listening, your nervous system is listening, your energy field is listening, and every thought you repeat becomes a vibration in your body, a signal to your reality, a prophecy unfolding in silence. So speak with reverence, even when you're tired, even when you're unsure, especially when you're afraid. That is when the power of your thinking becomes sacred. That is when you step not into illusion, but into alignment, into truth, into love. Not love as sentiment, but love as vibration, love as clarity. Love as the refusal to think thoughts that betray your divinity. Let your thinking become a prayer, not with folded hands, but with an open mind. Let every thought be a candle lit in the dark room of unconsciousness. Let your inner dialogue reflect your divine inheritance, not your conditioned past. You are not here to rehearse wounds. You are here to remember wholeness. And when you forget, as we all do, return again. Return to the breath, return to the stillness, return to the observer within you who has never been harmed, never been afraid, never been less than divine. That witness within you is your anchor. And when your thinking returns to that awareness, the world begins to respond in kind. You may notice people treating you differently. You may find synchronicities arriving with more ease. You may watch as what once felt like effort begins to feel like flow. This is not coincidence. This is coherence. Coherence between who you are, how you think, and what you allow yourself to feel. And when that coherence is present, miracles are not rare, they are natural, because miracles are not events. They are perceptions. They are shifts in thinking from fear to love, from lack to trust, from separation to unity. And the more often you allow that shift in the quiet space of your mind, the more your entire life becomes a sanctuary of grace. You were never broken. You were only believing broken thoughts. You were never unworthy. You were only echoing unworthy beliefs. You were never disconnected. You were only distracted. And now you remember. You remember that every thought is a paintbrush, and your life is the canvas. Paint with intention. Paint with vision. Paint with love. Because the masterpiece of your life is not made with your hands, it's made with your mind. Then let us keep walking gently, steadily, down this sacred path of remembering. Because remembering who you are is not a grand announcement, not a mountaintop moment with trumpets and crowds. It is a soft return, a humble realignment with the center of your being. And that return begins with a single conscious thought. I no longer choose to think in opposition to my soul. You see, the soul doesn't argue. It doesn't scream. It doesn't compete for your attention. It simply waits quietly, faithfully, lovingly beneath the chatter of the mind. And when your thinking finally slows, when you stop rehearsing the noise long enough to be still, you feel it. That calm, sacred knowing, that presence that cannot be described, only experienced. That is who you are beneath the thoughts. But most people never meet that presence because they are too busy managing a mind that was never taught how to rest. A mind trained in survival, not serenity. A mind so addicted to solving problems that it forgets the greatest solution is often surrender. And here's the paradox. The more you try to control your thinking through force, the more chaotic it becomes. Because the ego loves a fight, but the soul whispers, there is nothing to fight. There is only something to release. So release it. Release the idea that your thoughts define you. Release the belief that your worth must be earned. Release the illusion that peace is conditional. And in that releasing, you begin to rise, not with effort, but with ease. Because the heavy thoughts fall away, and what remains is light. And what is light always remembers how to rise. The quality of your life, beloved, is not about the things you can accumulate, not about the titles you can achieve, not even about the milestones you cross. The quality of your life is about the quality of your presence. And presence is the gift you give yourself when your thoughts no longer drag you away from the now. In this moment here, now there is no problem. There is only breath. There is only being. And there is the choice right here to think a thought that brings you closer to peace. A thought that opens the window rather than slams the door. A thought that loves instead of judges. A thought that forgives instead of punishes. A thought that lifts instead of locks. And yes, you are allowed to choose those thoughts, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because those are the moments that shape the landscape of your life. Anyone can think beautifully when things are easy, but to think lovingly in the face of fear, to think kindly when the world is cruel, to think abundantly when the bank account says otherwise, that is the true power of spiritual maturity. That is the fire of awakened thinking. That is the light that cannot be put out by circumstance. You are not your old reactions. You are not your unconscious habits. You are not your childhood programming. You are not your inner critic. You are not your inherited shame. You are not the wounds of your lineage. You are the sky that holds it all. You are the space between the thoughts. You are the stillness beneath the storm. And in that stillness, you are free. From this stillness, begin again. Begin thinking in the language of truth. I am here. I am whole. I am aligned. I am willing. I am enough. You don't need the world to agree with you to think in alignment with love. You don't need proof to think in alignment with abundance. You don't need apologies to think in alignment with forgiveness. The outer world does not need to shift first. You do. And once you do, the world, as if by divine reflection, follows. Not always instantly, not always in the ways you expect, but always faithfully, because your outer world is a delayed reflection of your inner devotion. So devote yourself to thoughts that heal, to thoughts that build, to thoughts that honor your sacredness. Devote yourself to thinking like someone who knows they are connected to Source, because you are. You always have been. No thought can sever that connection. But every thought can either obscure it or reveal it. Choose the thoughts that reveal. Choose the thoughts that set you free. Choose the thoughts that invite miracles. Because when the quality of your thinking rises, your whole life becomes a reflection of heaven lived on earth. And the door to that heaven is always unlocked. You simply need to think your way home. Then let us in, not with noise, but with a whisper, the kind that reaches deeper than any shout ever could. Your life is not waiting on the outside, it is blooming from the inside. You are not here to collect thoughts like trophies or chase perfection through the mind. You are here to think in alignment with the truth you already are. So pause, breathe, and remember, the quality of your life is the quality of the thoughts you nurture when no one else is listening. Choose thoughts that return you to peace. Choose thoughts that remember your wholeness. Choose thoughts that make room for grace. And when in doubt, choose love. Because the most powerful thought you will ever think is, I already am. And from that knowing, everything changes forever. There comes a moment, not always loud, not always visible, when something stirs inside you. A whisper beneath the noise of the world, a gentle nudge against the walls you've built. It's not a cry for help, it's a call to remembrance. Not a plea to become something new, but an invitation to return to what you've always been. The real you was never gone, just buried. Buried beneath expectations you inherited. Buried beneath stories you were told. Buried beneath disappointments you never deserved. Like the sun behind the clouds, your true self never ceased to shine, was only momentarily obscured. The soul cannot vanish. It can only be veiled. We have been conditioned to forget. We were taught to listen to voices louder than our own. We were encouraged to trade our truth for approval, our joy for performance, our presence for productivity. And so we buried the softness. We hid the stillness. We abandoned the innocence. Not because we were broken, but because we thought that's what survival demanded. But let me tell you something simple and eternal. You were never meant to live a life of disguise. You were never meant to become a copy of anyone else's dream. You were born in truth, formed in love, and destined for freedom. And though you've wandered far, nothing essential has been lost. The gold is still in you. It has only been waiting for you to remember where you placed the shovel. You are not the names you were called. You are not the roles you perform. You are not the fears you carry. These are layers, masks, echoes. But beneath them lives something eternal and untouched. Something the world did not give you and therefore cannot take away. There is a light in you that predates your pain. There is a wholeness in you that survived the fragmentation. There is a love in you that has nothing to prove. And when you begin to listen, to truly listen, you'll hear the voice of your soul reminding you, I am still here. I always was. We bury ourselves under layers of striving and shame because the ego teaches us that who we are is not enough. It shouts, be more, do more, win more. And so we become performers in our own lives, applauded for the act, yet exhausted from the pretending. The tragedy is not that we forget, we all forget. The tragedy is believing the forgetting is final, but it's not. You are allowed to remember. You are allowed to put down the performance. You are allowed to stop running and sit in your own stillness. You are allowed to say, I miss who I was before the world told me who to be. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of spiritual courage. Healing does not begin when we change. Healing begins when we become honest about where we are. When we say, I'm tired of wearing masks that don't fit. I'm tired of living someone else's life while my own soul waits patiently behind the curtain. You do not need to become anything. You need only to uncover. You do not need to seek what you already are. You need only to see what you have buried. The acorn does not strive to become an oak. It simply surrenders to the truth of what it is. And in that surrender, everything it is destined to be unfolds naturally, organically, miraculously. The same is true for you. Your soul is not interested in your resume. It does not keep score of your failures. It does not measure your worth and productivity. It knows nothing of scarcity or shame. Your soul is interested in one thing: truth. And truth cannot be manufactured, it can only be revealed. So breathe, and in this breath, allow the dust to settle. Feel beneath the performance. Feel beneath the guilt. Feel beneath the should and the should have. Do you feel it? That flicker of aliveness? That is you, the real you, still warm, still awake, still whole. Not the version of you molded by society. Not the version of you that fears rejection. Not the version of you trying to earn worth, but the version that just is. The child who once played without apology. The spirit who once loved without fear. The soul who once trusted without evidence. The real you is not broken. The real you is not confused. The real you is not behind. The real you is free. And all the pain you've walked through, all the betrayal, all the heartbreak, all the disappointment, they did not erase you. They revealed where you stopped believing in your own light. But that light, it never stopped believing in you. There is something holy about reclaiming what you buried. There is something sacred about meeting yourself again after years of pretending. It is the most intimate reunion. The ego will resist. It will panic at the thought of losing control. It will whisper lies to keep you in hiding. But you are not here to obey fear. You are here to dissolve it with awareness. You were not born to live in defense. You were born to live in alignment. You were not born to compete. You were born to connect. You were not born to hustle for worth. You were born worthy. Every time you return to yourself, the universe sings. Every time you say yes to stillness, the divine listens. Every time you dare to feel instead of suppress, you melt another layer of illusion. You don't need more fixing, you need more remembering. You don't need to be taught your worth. You need to unlearn everything that made you doubt it. You don't need a map. You are the destination. And you've been waiting for your own arrival. Keep going inward. Keep digging. Every buried truth is waiting for your permission to rise. And when it does, you'll weep not because you found something new, but because you finally return to what has always been yours. And the beautiful paradox is this: the moment you stop chasing who you think you're supposed to be, the real you comes forth with grace, not effort. There is no struggle in being what is already true. There is only a quiet softening like a flower unfolding to the sun, not because it was forced, but because it was ready. You have been ready longer than you realize. You have carried the keys while believing you were locked out. You have sung the melody of your soul in whispers, afraid someone might hear your joy and judge it. But now is the season of returning. Now is the time for shedding the heavy cloaks of pretending. Now is the sacred invitation to live unburdened by the expectations of others and unashamed of the depth of your light. There is no medal for dimming your spirit to keep others comfortable. There is no reward for betraying your truth in the name of being accepted by people who don't even know who they are. You are not here to be understood by the asleep. You are here to awaken. And awaken you must, not in rebellion, but in remembrance, not in anger, but in peace. Because the real you is not here to fight for identity. It already knows its origin is divine. The real you is not in scarcity, nor confusion, nor desperation. The real you breathes in harmony with all that is. Imagine for a moment that you were never taught to abandon yourself. Imagine that no one ever told you to earn love, to fear failure, to doubt your worth. Who would you be today? You'd be bold, soft, limitless. You'd be unapologetically radiant. You'd be free. But even though the world did teach you otherwise, and even though you did forget, it's not too late. Because what is real cannot be destroyed. Truth may be delayed, but it is never denied. And the soul waits patiently, lovingly, as you remove each mask, each wound, each lie. It waits without judgment. It waits without rush, because your soul remembers who you are, even when you do not. It's why the ache has never left. Not the ache of loss, but the ache of remembering. That quiet longing you feel, it's not a weakness. It's the voice of truth calling you home. And as you begin to answer that call, not with panic, but with presence, you start to feel life differently. You notice the sacred in the simple. You hear silence not as emptiness, but as clarity. You look in the mirror and see someone you're finally willing to meet, not fix. And that's when it begins. The rebirth. Not loud, not dramatic, but deep. A returning, layer by layer, to the essence beneath it all. You realize that your worth was never up for negotiation. You realize that love was never something you had to win. You realize that your sensitivity was never a flaw, it was your compass. And the more you honor what you used to hide, the more you shine without effort. This is not arrogance. This is reverence. This is not ego. This is alignment. You stop asking, how do I become enough? And start asking, what have I believed that made me forget I already am? And like a snake shedding its skin, you release the roles, the people-pleasing, the striving, the proving. You lay them down gently, with gratitude for how they served you when you didn't yet know your truth. Then you step forward, not into a new identity, but into the space you once feared was too sacred for you to inhabit. This is where you begin to live, truly live, not in reaction to the world, but in response to your spirit. Not from wounded identity, but from remembered wholeness. And you see now that healing was never about becoming something different. Healing was about revealing who was always beneath the pain. The innocent one, the quiet one, the true one. And now you are ready to let that one speak, to let that one breathe, to let that one lead. There will be moments when the old story tries to pull you back. It will tell you you're not ready, that you're not healed enough, that you're still too broken. But listen closely. That voice is not your soul. It's the echo of your conditioning. And echoes may sound real, but they have no substance. They cannot touch you unless you stop and give them meaning. You don't need to argue with the noise. You just need to walk forward anyway, eyes open, heart steady, spirit rooted. And when you do, when you walk with the quiet knowing of your wholeness, life begins to rearrange itself around your truth. You attract what honors you. You align with what nurtures you. You magnetize what speaks your soul's language. This is not magic. This is resonance. This is the law of harmony. The universe responds not to what you pretend to be, but to who you actually are. And when who you are is no longer hidden beneath shame, no longer buried beneath fear, you become a lighthouse. Not because you shout, not because you strive, but because you exist fully, freely, and fiercely as yourself. And that is the greatest service you can offer the world, your authenticity. Not a performance, not a projection, but your living truth. Because when you stop hiding, you give others permission to stop hiding too. When you forgive yourself for forgetting, you give others the courage to remember. And when you live with your heart uncovered, you become the healing you once waited for. So let this be your sacred reclamation. Let this be the breath where you say, I am no longer a stranger to myself. Let this be the moment where you stop digging through the rubble of who you used to be and instead rise clean and whole from the silence of your becoming. Because the real you is not waiting at the end of your achievements. The real you is not waiting in the mirror of someone else's approval. The real you is not waiting on the other side of perfection. The real you is now, right here, beneath every false layer, beneath every buried truth, beneath every mask, alive, whole, sacred, and ready. Not ready to chase, not ready to perform, but ready to live as who you were before the forgetting. Because the real you was never gone, just buried. And now, you remember. There is a divine rhythm to awakening. It does not come in a rush, but in ripples. One realization leads to another. One truth uncovers the next. And slowly, your life becomes less about running from pain and more about moving toward presence. You no longer seek escape, you seek alignment. You no longer try to numb the ache, you listen to it. Because now you understand the ache is sacred. It is not a flaw in your design. It is a compass pointing you back to where you buried your joy. And isn't that beautiful? That even in your suffering, there was guidance. That even in your confusion, there was wisdom. You thought you were lost, but you were actually being led. Not away from yourself, but deeper into yourself. The breakdowns, the betrayals, the silent nights, they were not detours. They were doorways. Doorways into depth. Doorways into truth. Doorways into the only thing that ever really mattered, your soul's remembrance. And when the remembrance comes, it does not come with fireworks. It comes with peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need conditions. The kind of peace that says, I no longer need to be someone else to feel worthy. It is a peace born not of control, but of surrender. Not of striving, but of being. And in that peace, you begin to see everything differently. The people who hurt you, they were asleep too. The moments you regret, they were your teachers. The mistakes you made, they were chapters, not definitions. You begin to release the grip. You stop gripping the old narrative. You stop defending your limitations. You stop arguing for the smallness that never fit you. You see, now that your pain didn't make you less, it made you aware. Aware of what you never want to abandon again. Aware of what it means to live truthfully, not conveniently. And so you let go not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You let go of the people who only knew how to love the mask. You let go of the timelines that were never yours. You let go of the fight to be seen because you finally see yourself. And oh, how holy that is. To see yourself not through the eyes of trauma, not through the lens of performance, but through the gaze of love. You begin to walk differently. Not with arrogance, but with grace. Not with fear, but with reverence. Because you know what it took to get here. You know the darkness you walked through. You know the courage it took to unbury yourself. And so you don't need to convince anyone anymore. You don't need to explain your worth. You simply live it. You embody it quietly, powerfully, authentically. The real you is not loud, but it is radiant. The real you is not perfect, but it is whole. The real you is not finished, but it is free. Free to love without apology, free to express without fear, free to create, not to be noticed, but because it brings you joy. And in this freedom, you discover something else. There is no separation between your healing and the healing of the world. Because every time you show up as your true self, you give someone else permission to breathe deeper. Every time you choose peace over performance, you remind others that peace is possible. Every time you stop hiding, you shift the collective story from shame to sovereignty. This is how change happens not through force, but through authenticity. not through shouting, but through shining. And the world needs your shine. Not the polished version, not the filtered version, but the raw, real, beautifully human light that only you carry. You are not here to be like everyone else. You are here to be a mirror that reflects what is true, a mirror that reminds others of their own light, a mirror that says, look, you never lost yourself. You only stopped looking within. So keep looking within. Keep returning. When the world gets noisy, return. When the doubts grow loud, return. When the pain resurfaces, return. Return to the breath. Return to the now. Return to the place inside you that was never touched by fear, never defined by failure, never dimmed by time. That place is home. That place is where the real you lives. And from that place, everything becomes clear. You don't need to chase what's meant for you. It will find you in your authenticity. You don't need to beg for love you are love. You don't need to fear the unknown. The unknown is where your soul dances. And as you live from that space, life begins to unfold in divine rhythm. Not always easy, not always predictable, but always meaningful, always guided, always holy. Because you are no longer walking as someone pretending to be alive. You are walking as someone who has returned, not to a version, but to the original, the essence, the truth, the real you, still here, still radiant, still enough. And now that you've returned to the center of your being, you start to witness the world from a place of calm power, no longer tossed by every opinion, no longer shrinking in rooms that once intimidated you. You realize that nothing outside of you can define the truth within you. That freedom is not found in changing your surroundings, but in transforming the way you see. And now you see with the eyes of the soul. You see through illusion. You see past the masks of others and into the essence they've forgotten too. You no longer crave approval because you recognize the futility of trying to be understood in a language that doesn't speak to your truth. You don't resist that either. You bless it and you let it be. This is the maturity of awakening, not just reclaiming your own soul, but learning how to let others walk their own path without judgment. You begin to understand that everyone is buried in some way. Everyone is healing from something. And so instead of resenting the world, you begin to soften toward it. You move from resentment to compassion, from defense to openness, from why don't they see me to I hope they find themselves too. And that shift, it's nothing short of sacred. You begin to live not as a reaction to the world, but as an offering to it. Your presence becomes medicine. Your authenticity becomes a lighthouse. And you don't need to scream it from rooftops. You simply are, because when you are rooted in the real you, your life itself becomes a transmission, a silent teaching, a quiet revolution of light. And with this, something even more powerful begins to happen. You no longer see your past as a curse. You see it as the soil. You see the pain not as the end of your innocence, but as the beginning of your depth. The things that once made you bitter now make you wise. The wounds that once closed your heart now expand it. You've stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And you've started asking, what did this awaken in me? And that question unlocks the door to your soul. You no longer seek healing from the outside in. You don't chase remedies. You return to the healer within. You trust the divine intelligence in your tears. You listen to your body. You believe your intuition. You treat your triggers not as enemies, but as sacred messengers whispering where more light is needed. And you become gentle, not weak gentle. There is a quiet strength and softness, a profound courage and tenderness. You no longer need the armor because truth doesn't fear exposure. You let others think what they want because their perception cannot alter your essence. You walk unshaken because your peace is no longer negotiable. This is where the real living begins. When you are no longer trying to protect a false self, when you are no longer addicted to performance, when you are no longer imprisoned by the past or obsessed with the future, you begin to live from presence. And presence is not a practice, it is a return. The return to now, the return to simplicity, the return to the breath, the body, the beauty of this exact moment. Because the soul only lives now, and now is enough. Always has been, always will be. When you drop into this moment, the illusion of separation dissolves. You see God in the ordinary. You feel grace in your stillness. You remember that there was never a moment when you were truly alone. You may have forgotten, yes, but forgotten doesn't mean forsaken. You look back at the darkest nights and you no longer curse them. You bow to them because those were the nights you cracked open. Those were the nights the illusions began to fall away. Those were the nights you began to hear the whisper behind the noise saying, "Come home." And you did. Not all at once. Not perfectly, but faithfully. And now, you are here not as a shadow, but as a soul. Not as a role, but as a presence. Not as a reaction, but as a being. You live slower now because you're no longer in a race. You breathe deeper because you're no longer holding your worth hostage. You smile more because your joy is no longer conditional. You give without grasping. You love without losing yourself. You create without comparing. You've dropped the heaviness, the story, the struggle, not because life got easier, but because you remembered who you are. And the beautiful irony is this: what the world told you to hide is exactly what makes you whole. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, it is your gateway to empathy. Your softness is not a weakness, it is your truest strength. Your presence is not insignificant, it is the very space where healing begins. You no longer try to be impressive. You now aim to be honest. You no longer chase meaning, you create it by being fully here. And in that presence, you are guided, not by fear, not by ego, but by something quieter, deeper, more ancient, the wisdom of the soul, the whisper of your divine source, the intelligence of love itself. And this is the moment where everything turns. This is the moment you stop looking outward for proof and start looking inward for peace. This is the moment where you become the parent to the child inside who was waiting all along to be loved without condition. This is the moment where forgiveness isn't something you do, it's something you become. A state of being that flows through you effortlessly because you are no longer interested in carrying what was never yours. You choose freedom. Not later, not when it's convenient, but now. And now again. And now again. Because freedom isn't a destination, it's a decision. A decision to be here as you are and know that it is more than enough. And so we arrive at the sacred edge of remembrance, where everything you once sought outside of you is revealed to have lived within you all along. You were not born to chase love, you are love. You were not created to seek light, you radiate it. You were not sent here to gather pieces of yourself. You were sent here whole, radiant, holy, and merely invited to remember. The real you was never gone, just buried. Under layers of fear that were never yours, under beliefs passed down by generations too wounded to know better, under silence you thought would keep you safe. But safety is not found in hiding. It is found in truth. And truth never asks you to be small. You are not a damaged soul in need of fixing. You are an infinite spirit in need of freeing. You do not need permission to return to yourself. You do not need validation to exist. You do not need agreement to be whole. The only requirement is your yes. A wholehearted yes to presence. A gentle yes to truth. A courageous yes to life as it unfiltered, unedited, unrehearsed. This is where the liberation begins. When you stop trying to be lovable and realize you are love, when you stop trying to prove your existence and begin inhabiting it fully, when you stop searching for God in the sky and remember God has always lived inside your breath, your body, your being, and when this knowing settles in your bones, the world no longer has the power to shape you. You become rooted in what cannot be shaken. Not arrogant anchored, not defensive devoted to the truth of your soul, devoted to the peace that no storm can take, devoted to the sacred path of being fully, fiercely, freely you. You begin to walk in the world differently. You speak with softness and certainty. You listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. You love without needing anything in return because your source of love is infinite. And you stop grasping for control because you understand that surrender is the truest form of power. This is where the ego dissolves not in defeat, but in awe, because the ego cannot survive in the presence of truth. And truth is what you are. You no longer hold resentment because you no longer hold yourself hostage. You no longer repeat the story because you no longer identify with the suffering. You've learned that the wound is not your identity. It is the place the light enters. It is not a mark of failure. It is the sign of initiation. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be present, to weep when the heart breaks, to laugh when joy floods in, to sit in silence when words are not enough, to dance even when no one watches, to love even if it means loss, to live even if it means letting go. Because real living is not about certainty, it's about surrender. And surrender is not weakness, it is the ultimate alignment. It is saying, I trust what I cannot see because I know who I am. It is releasing the story that says, I must control everything, and returning to the sacred knowing I am already held. And you are held by a universe that speaks in synchronicities, held by a divine presence that has never left your side, held by the breath that continues moment after moment, asking nothing but your return. So come back again and again. Come back to the sacred now. Come back to your quiet knowing. Come back to your soul. Because no matter how far you've wandered, no matter how long you've been buried, the truth is still waiting with open arms. It is not bitter. It is not angry. It is not impatient. It is still here, still whole, still you. And now you are ready not to become something new, but to unbecome everything that was never real, to shed, to release, to return. And in that return, you risen not above others, but above illusion. Not in ego, but in essence. Not in perfection, but in peace. The world may not understand this version of you. Let it not matter. Because understanding is not your mission, embodiment is. When you live as your truth, you are the mirror the world forgot it needed. When you walk as your soul, you are the prayer the world didn't know it had spoken. And when you return to yourself, you return to all. You begin to live not as a separate being, but as an extension of life itself. The trees become your teachers. The stars become your reminders. The silence becomes your sanctuary. And love pure, boundless love becomes your way of being. Not something you give, not something you do, but something you are. You are the love you've searched for. You are the light you've longed to see. You are the peace you once thought was lost. And now you remember fully, completely. Finally, the real you was never gone, just buried. But you, my dear, have risen, and the world will never be the same.